When the flight attendant told her, "Your seat isn't here," the entire first-class cabin fell silent. No one spoke, no one intervened. Only the faint sound of a leather suitcase brushing against a seat echoed through the thick silence, the kind of silence that prejudice leaves behind. In that moment, Dr. Maya Ellison, the black woman who had just stepped into the first-class cabin of Atlantic Crown Airlines, wasn't a billionaire tech entrepreneur, nor the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar AI corporation. She was just a passenger judged by her skin color before she even had the chance to sit down. But this story isn't about humiliation. It's about an earthquake the moment a woman decided she would never endure it again. That morning, San Francisco International Airport glimmered under the first sunlight of summer. Inside the Atlantic Crown first-class lounge, the air carried the scent of Italian leather espresso and the quiet hum of power, spoken only in low tones. Men in charcoal suits typed on laptops, as if every keystroke were an order, the clink of ice against glass soft, but commanding enough to draw glances. In a corner of the room, Maya sat still in a velvet grey chair, her back straight, her hand gently turning a glass of water. She wasn't working, just watching through the window as Boeing jets rolled across the runway like colossal chess pieces in a game she knew by heart. At 41, Maya was the founder and CEO of Solstice Dynamics, a leading AI company in logistics. She had created Orion, a system capable of predicting and rerouting global supply chains with near-prophetic accuracy. She had redefined the future of transportation, commerce, and globalization. Today she was flying to London to finalize the acquisition of Hawthorne & Sons, shipping a century-old British empire valued at $14 billion. But for Maya, it wasn't just a deal, it was a silent coronation. She didn't like noise, nor the glossy magazine features about powerful women. Maya believed that real power never needed an introduction. It only needed to be felt. When the announcement echoed through the lounge, Flight 710 to London, Heathrow is now boarding first-class passengers. Please proceed to Gate 5. Maya gently closed her laptop and stood. Every movement she made was precise, as if programmed neither hurried nor slow, just enough for people to instinctively step aside. The gate agent, Tyler Grant, about 33 years old, had the tired look of someone who'd worked too many early shifts. He scanned the barcode on her phone, glanced briefly at the screen, and said flatly, "Seat 1A. Enjoy your flight." He didn't recognize the name on the ticket, a name that if searched online would return millions of results: Dr. Maya Ellison, Solstice Dynamics. She walked through the jet bridge, where the scent of jet fuel mixed with the cold air flowing from the massive steel vessel. As Maya stepped aboard, the first person she met was Karen Whitfield, the lead flight attendant, a middle-aged woman whose thin smile was outmatched by the sharp intelligence in her eyes. "Welcome aboard, ma'am." Karen's tone was polite, but her gaze moved quickly from Maya's natural curls to the finely tailored charcoal grey suit, then paused on the small white pearl earrings. Just 1 second, but it was long enough. Maya noticed it all. She was an expert in reading micro-expressions, those fleeting emotions that flash across the human face in less than a millisecond. She knew exactly what that glance carried: judgment, categorization, and exclusion. Maya gave a slight nod without a word and turned left into first class, the secluded world of 7 passengers who paid more for a single seat than many people earned in months. Seat 1A was by the window. In the seat beside it, a man around 38 named Lucas Hale fumbled with a leather briefcase, speaking loudly into his phone. "I told you Sterling will sign. I have a meeting with them this week in London." Hearing the name, Sterling Meyer's lips curved faintly. Sterling, a subsidiary of Hawthorne, the very company she was about to acquire. The man sitting next to her was talking about her without having a clue. She placed her briefcase under the seat, stowed her laptop, and reached for her noise-cancelling headphones. But before her hand touched her jacket pocket, a shadow fell over her. "Excuse me," Karen's voice came from above, sharper than necessary. "Can I help you with something?" Meyer looked up calmly. "No, thank you." Karen didn't leave. She crossed her arms tightly. "I think you're in the wrong cabin. Economy is just past the galley." The words dropped softly, but they hit like a blow to the heart. Lucas turned to look curious. A few other passengers glanced up from their magazines. The air in first class, once serene and refined, suddenly felt cold and heavy. In Meyer's eyes, a spark flickered, not of anger, but of exhaustion. The exhaustion of having to prove once again that she belonged. "My ticket clearly says, Seat 1A. Her voice was clear, cool and steady. The system must have made an error. Karen replied, her tone shifting into false sweetness. "We usually reserve this seat for premium passengers. You might have been assigned by mistake. I'll sort it out for you. Please return to the main cabin." She didn't say, "Please." She said "for me," as if Meyer's presence was an inconvenience. No one spoke. Meyer looked straight into her eyes, a calm, unnerving stare. Then, without a word, she placed her hand on the seat and slowly sat down. No shouting, no argument, only the silence of someone who understood her own power. In her mind, one thought echoed once again. Once again, someone assumed the right to sit in seat 1A belonged to a certain color. But this time she wouldn't yield, because she wasn't just sitting for herself. She was sitting for every woman who had ever been told, "You don't belong here." Karen stood frozen, her lips pressed tight, unaware that in that single moment, in one careless sentence, in one misjudged glance, she had set off a chain reaction that would destroy her career, her airline, and the illusion of hierarchy she believed she was protecting. And Maya Ellison just sat there, calm before the storm, her eyes fixed on the window, where sunlight glided over the silver skin of the aircraft. She exhaled softly a whisper that sounded almost like a vow. Enough. And with those two words, one of the most shocking incidents in aviation history was about to begin, not with a scream, but with absolute silence. The first-class cabin of Atlantic Crown Airlines was so quiet that even the faint hum of the air conditioner could be heard above. But within that silence, there was something else, an invisible current of tension, cold and sharp like static in the air. Karen Whitfield stood before seat 1A, holding the manifest in her trembling hand. She tried to look composed, but her voice was betraying her. She didn't know why the woman sitting before her made her so uneasy. It wasn't the way Meyer looked at her. It was the silence that felt almost violent. The woman didn't react, didn't argue, just sat still with eyes deep as still water. And in that depth, Karen saw a reflection of her own pettiness staring back. "Ma'am, I'm just following protocol," Karen said, forcing her tone to soften. "Sometimes the system assigns seats incorrectly. We just need to verify. There's no need." Meyer interrupted, calm yet firm. She pulled out her phone, opened her e-ticket, and held it up. Seat 1A. Doctor. Meyer Ellison. Solstice Executive Tier member. Valid booking. You can scan it if you'd like. Karen glanced at the screen, but her eyes barely touched it, as though evidence wasn't enough. "I just need to confirm with the crew," she replied stiffly, taking a step back. Please wait a moment." At that instant, Lucas Hale from seat 1B leaned over the scent of heavy cologne, filling the air, his voice deep and entitled. "She's just trying to help you," he said with a half smirk. "This is first class, not economy. Maybe it really is a mistake." Maya turned her gaze toward him. Not angry, not cold, just a calm, curious look, as if studying a peculiar creature under a microscope. That composure made Lucas freeze. The smirk on his face faded. He turned away and fiddled awkwardly with his seatbelt. Karen returned this time without her polite smile. "I'm sorry, Miss Ellison, but I need you to return to economy while we verify this. Otherwise, I'll have to call security." Maya closed her eyes for a brief moment and inhaled slowly. Not out of fear, but fatigue. The kind of exhaustion born from repetition, from the endless cycle of prejudice, of constantly having to prove she deserved to sit in the very place she had paid for, and more than that, helped build the system that made such places exist. When she opened her eyes again, there was a deadly calm within them. "You don't need to call anyone," she said quietly. "I'll stay here. But if you want to escalate this, go ahead." Her voice was soft, but it carried a weight that thickened the air around them. Karen instinctively stepped back, then straightened again, doubling down, as if asserting authority was the only way to regain control. "So you're refusing to follow crew instructions?" "No," Maya replied. "I'm refusing to be treated like someone who doesn't belong here." The words pierced through Karen like a blade. For a second, guilt flickered across her face, but pride returned just as quickly. "Fine," she said coldly. "Then I'll get assistance." She turned sharply, walking toward the front of the cabin, the thud of her heels echoing against the carpet like hammers striking metal. Lucas let out a short laugh, muttering just loud enough for Maya to hear. She should learn to keep quiet. People who know their place don't get into trouble. Maya didn't look at him. She didn't respond. She simply sat still, her hands resting on her lap, her gaze fixed on the airplane window, where sunlight shimmered across the wing like a blade of silver. Memories surged through her mind, her high school counselor telling her not to dream of Harvard, the investor asking who was backing her, the countless emails ignored until they realized Dr. Ellison wasn't a man. They were all the same gatekeepers who believed they held the right to decide who could pass through. 1 minute passed, then 2. Karen returned this time with Tyler Grant, the gate agent, holding an iPad. "Ma'am, we need you to disembark so we can verify your ticket," he said quietly, his voice uncertain, his eyes avoiding hers. "The issue," Maya said slowly, "isn't with the ticket. It's with the assumption in her head." She nodded slightly toward Karen. Karen took a sharp breath, her face flushing red with anger. "This is the captain's order. If you don't leave voluntarily, we'll call airport security," the cabin murmured. Passengers began whispering, some pulling out their phones to record. A woman behind said softly, "Oh my God, this is embarrassing." Someone else replied, "I bet they'll delay the flight because of this." Maya looked around, seeing the lenses pointed at her, the eyes filled with curiosity and quiet judgment. She knew that a single harsh word would brand her as the angry black woman. But she hadn't come here to cause chaos. She had come to restore order. She unlocked her phone, scrolling to a single contact in her favorite's Jason Park Falcon Wing. Her finger hovered for a second, then tapped. 1 ring. Then a man's voice answered. "Dr. Ellison Jason," she said, her voice low and sharp. "Execute Protocol Falcon. Effective immediately." There was half a second of silence. "Confirmed, ma'am. Full charter. Full charter." She hung up and placed the phone on the armrest. Her hand remained steady. No one in the cabin understood what had just happened. 5 minutes later, the lights flickered, and the intercom crackled with the trembling voice of Captain Dana Brooks. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've just received an emergency message from Dallas Operations. Please remain seated." Karen frowned. Tyler stepped back, his face pale with worry. From Tyler's radio, the urgent voice of Erin Lopez at the operations center rang out high-pitched and panicked. "Tyler, what the hell is happening on Flight 710? I just got a red alert from EVP Martin Keegan. Solstice Dynamics has cancelled the entire charter. Repeat, cancelled the entire charter. They said their CEO is being removed from one of our planes." Tyler's face drained of color. Karen froze in place. No one spoke. Lucas, who had been smirking, turned to look at Maya, and when their eyes met, his smirk vanished. Another 5 minutes passed. The captain's voice came back, this time shaking. "Ladies and gentlemen, Flight 710 to London. Heathrow has been cancelled. All passengers please disembark immediately." The cabin erupted into chaos. Voices rose. "Why, what's going on? Who's responsible?" Maya stood, picked up her leather briefcase, and adjusted her jacket. Sunlight slanted through the window, casting a soft glow across her calm face. But in her eyes was a storm, vast and silent. She turned to Karen, whose face had gone pale as paper. "You were given a choice," Maya said quietly, her voice cutting like a scalpel. "And you chose wrong." No one answered. The only sound was the steady click of Maya's heels against the carpet as she walked down the aisle. The cabin door opened. Morning light flooded in, outlining her tall, poised silhouette, the woman who had just cancelled an entire flight with a single call. Behind her, Karen trembled, sinking into an empty seat. Tyler stood frozen, his face drained. Lucas turned off his phone, his palms slick with sweat. No one said a word. But deep down, they all understood. They had just witnessed a kind of power that didn't need to shout, didn't need to prove itself. It only needed a nod. A world had turned upside down in 10 minutes. A world where the person deemed out of place was in truth the one who owned the plane they were sitting in. And as the first-class door closed behind Maya Ellison, the world of those who believed they had the right to judge began to crumble, not with an explosion, but with the cold, quiet sound of a phone call. No one in the first-class cabin of Flight 710 understood what had just happened. 1 minute earlier, they were about to fly to London, sipping champagne and firing off emails about multi-million-dollar deals. 1 minute later, the cold announcement cut through the air. The flight has been cancelled. All passengers must deplane immediately. The whole cabin sank into a storm of silence, a thick quiet born of a fear that had not yet found its name. Karen Whitfield stood frozen in the aisle, clutching the manifest as her hands shook. The words on it were Dr. Maya Ellison, very, very important person. Charter principle suddenly blazed like a verdict inked in black. Tyler Grant, the gate agent, swallowed hard and tried to reach operations on his radio. On the other end, Erin Lopez's voice shook with fury. "Tyler, they just announced the contract is terminated. Solstice Dynamics has ended an $80 million per year charter. Martin Keegan is livid. He wants to know who insulted their CEO." The air in the cabin seemed to drop to low pressure. She's the CEO, Karen stammered, lips dry. "Not just the CEO," Tyler exhaled. "She's the person who chartered the entire plane." Karen staggered back, gripping a seat to keep from collapsing. Her heart pounded like a war drum. The words she had said moments ago. "Economy is in the back. You're in the wrong cabin," replayed in slow motion, each syllable a slap. In seat 1, B. Lucas Hale still didn't grasp it all. He pulled out his phone to record, hoping to post it online for the drama, but when he saw Maya Ellison stand, his throat went dry. She said nothing. She only picked up her leather briefcase, slid on her jacket, adjusted a cuff, then walked down the aisle like a commander, leaving a battlefield, not in victory, not in defeat, simply completing an order. People moved aside without being told. No one needed instruction. Everyone knew she was the eye of the storm. As Maya stepped through the aircraft door, the light of San Francisco International flooded in bright enough to sting. The wind carried the heavy, acrid scent of jet fuel, the smell of industry, of power, and of collapse. She did not look back. She didn't need to. In the cockpit, Captain Dana Brooks was mid-call with operations in Dallas. The man on the line spoke fast. Captain Brooks, Solstice Dynamics, just cancelled the charter. Do you understand? Cancelled all of it. Not just Flight 710. The entire global operations agreement. Do not let anyone go before we have a report. Dana drew a long breath. He looked out through the armored glass at the agitated first-class cabin. His voice came out rough. This will shake the entire airline. In the cabin, Karen sank into a seat, sweat darkening her collar. Passenger shouts rolled in from the rear like surf. What do you mean? Cancelled. I have a meeting in London in the morning. Refunds. When a few people filmed, muttering, this will go viral. And it would. Just not the way any of them hoped. As Maya entered the international concourse, her phone buzzed. Jason Park's voice was low and crisp. Dr. Ellison Protocol Falcon is complete. Charter cancelled agreement dissolved. Solstice Legal is drafting a statement. The Gulfstream G550 is waiting for you at the Oakland private terminal. The escort will arrive at exit 4 in 10 minutes. And the commercial passengers, Maya asked. Solstice will cover refunds and rebooking. Atlantic Crown handles the logistics. Maya nodded. Well done. She ended the call, slid the phone into her pocket, and walked past the clusters of travelers buzzing about the sudden cancellation of Flight 710. No one realized the woman in the charcoal suit was the center of it all. Composed, in control, but deep down her heart was pounding, not from anger, but from a familiar sorrow, the sorrow of having to use power to prove she deserved respect. On the plane, Captain Dana left the cockpit and strode straight to Karen, his anger tightly reined. Do you understand what you've just done? Karen looked up, lips trembling. I followed protocol. She didn't look like what Dana cut. In voice, low, but thunderous. Didn't look like someone who could charter an entire aircraft. Did you read the manifest before departure? One, a Dr. Maya Ellison, Solstice. Dynamics, a very, very important person, charter principal. That means she is the client who hired this entire crew. She is our boss. Do you understand? Karen broke into tears. I didn't know. I truly didn't know. Not knowing isn't a reason, Dana growled. It's prejudice, and prejudice has a price. He turned to Tyler. You as well. This should have been stopped at the gate. Tyler bowed his head, face drained. I'm sorry, Captain. I'll take responsibility. Both of you will report to human resources as soon as we clear the cabin, Dana concluded, walking away, shaking his head. Meanwhile, Lucas Hale hurried off the plane, phone pressed to his ear. Stephen, listen to me. I was sitting next to Maya Ellison. Yes, the CEO of Solstice. I didn't know. I didn't mean. She cancelled the whole flight. The voice on the other end was steel. You just cost us the Sterling Logistics deal. They've pulled out of negotiations. Lucas, we're finished. Wait, The call ended. Lucas stared at the dead screen, face bloodless. The quake had reached each person. No thunder required, only one cold phone call. 10 minutes later, Maya stepped out at exit 4. A black Cadillac waited. The driver opened the door and bowed. "Good morning, Dr. Ellison. We'll take you to Oakland." She settled into the back seat, the door thudding shut, sealing her off from the world outside. The city slid past the glass, busy, small, unaware that one decision had just shaved nearly $1 billion from a giant airline's market value. Maya leaned back and closed her eyes. Behind her lids, the image of Karen, bewildered, face-dry voice rose and faded. She didn't feel joy, no satisfaction, only a hollow space, because this justice, necessary as it was, tasted cold as metal. At the airport, chaos erupted. Hundreds of passengers jammed Atlantic Crown's counters. Erin Lopez shouted into the phone at Operations Chief Martin Keegan. "Yes, I know, they're already on Twitter. The hashtag Flight 710 is trending third nationwide. Reporters are asking if this was discrimination. What do you want me to say?" Keegan hissed through his teeth. "Say nothing. Prepare an apology statement. And find me 2 names. Karen Whitfield, Tyler Grant. Terminate them immediately. I do not want to see them for another second." Erin hung up, turned to the team. "You heard him. Clear the passengers, process refunds, and you to my office now." In a small conference room, Karen sat with hands clenched, eyes red. Tyler sat beside her, speechless. Erin dropped a file on the table, her voice hard as steel. The company lost an $80 million contract. The stock fell 12% in a single morning. You two are the direct cause. Effective immediately, both of you are terminated. "Please," Karen blurted. "I was just doing my job." "No." Erin cut in. Voice dropping, "You acted on your bias." "That is not your job." Karen broke down her forehead, touching the table. Tyler stared at the floor in silence. Outside the big CNN screen in the main hall flashed a breaking banner. Atlantic Crown flight cancelled amid allegation of discrimination against a black CEO. Solstice Dynamics terminates contract worth hundreds of millions. Airline shares plunge. Security footage showed Maya Ellison striding off the jet bridge, head high, eyes forward. Somewhere high in Solstice headquarters, a cluster of reporters waited for comment. But Maya answered no one. She didn't need to. She had already said everything with one act, an act that made the world stop and think. On the highway to Oakland, morning light unfurled like a ribbon of gold. In the quiet of the black Cadillac, Maya opened her eyes, looked up at the pale blue sky, and murmured to herself, "They will remember this lesson. Not because I am strong, but because I refuse to be silent." And back at the airport, the aftershocks of Flight 710 kept spreading ring after ring, sweeping away every illusion of privilege in a world that liked to call itself civilized. 3 hours after Dr. Maya Ellison's icy phone call, the global media machine began to shudder. From financial broadcasts in New York to aviation blogs across Europe, the name Atlantic Crown Airlines flooded the headlines with blazing red captions. Black CEO denied a first-class seat, cancels an entire flight with a single call. The story spread like a wildfire in peak dry season, and every newsline, every hashtag, every post poured fuel on the blaze that was incinerating the image of an airline once proud of its class and impeccable service. In the vast glass tower in Dallas Atlantic Crown's headquarters, Martin Keegan, Executive Vice President of Operations, slammed his hand on the table. Good Lord. A plane cancelled, not for technical reasons, not for weather, but for an employee's attitude. The room fell dead silent. On the giant screen, comments kept rolling. Prejudice still lives it, just smiles while insulting you. She is Maya Ellison, the woman they dared to throw off the very plane she had chartered. Karma is served cold and expensive. Martin bowed his head, his voice dropping. We've lost it. Not just the $80 million contract, our corporate honor. In San Francisco, in a small office, Karen Whitfield sat motionless. She had just signed the termination letter, a sheet of paper so thin, yet heavy as a sentence. Outside the window, the sky was dense grey, a misting rain beading on the glass into a blurred haze. Karen looked down at her hands. The fingers that used to button her uniform every morning now trembled bare and fragile. She still could not believe it ended so fast. 20 years in aviation, from cabin crew to lead flight attendant, and now losing everything over a few sentences. I didn't mean to, she whispered to herself. I just thought she didn't look like a first-class type. But the voice in her head snapped back. Didn't look like, what does that mean? Skin color, hair style. Her silence, revulsion, washed over the very thing she once called professional instinct. Across town, Lucas Hale sat in a hotel bar in the middle of the afternoon, face lowered over a glass of whiskey. The firing call came just 2 hours after the cancellation. His superior's voice was cold as stone. Lucas, you were recorded, chiming in on discriminatory behavior toward our strategic client. Sterling Logistics sent the clip straight to Solstice Dynamics. Your contract is terminated immediately. He tried to smile, but it twisted. The confidence, the I know the game, vanished. The man who had belittled a black woman had just been erased by the very system he worshipped. The glass shook in his hand. He laughed bitterly. So this is how it feels when power turns its back. Meanwhile, at Solstice Tower in Palo Alto, Maya, Ellison sat in her office on the 48th floor, looking out over a bay draped in fog. News about her spilled everywhere. The world had named her action the cold gesture. Media wanted interviews. Financial outlets wanted the powerful woman CEO angle. She declined them all. She knew they would ask, "Do you regret it?" And she had no answer. Because the truth was, she felt neither joy nor triumph. What she felt was an abyss of emptiness. Maya had won, yes, but the victory was cold, heavy, and solitary. It did not rise from pride, but from a pain repeated too many times. That night, Maya came home late. The penthouse was vast walls of glass, looking over the entire Bay city lights, casting bands of shadow and glow across her face. She brewed a cup of mint tea, settled into an armchair, and turned on the television. On the screen, the CNN segment replayed passengers shouting on Flight 710. The crawl read, "Atlantic Crown loses 12% of market value after the incident." The anchor said sources indicate that Dr. Maya Ellison, CEO of Solstice Dynamics, terminated an $80 million charter after being questioned by airline staff about her suitability to sit in first class. Maya sat still. Her image showed on the screen, resolute features, distant gaze, walking straight through a crowd. A striking, powerful picture. But inside, a question rose. If that woman hadn't been me, if she had no power and no money, who would protect her? The question kept her awake all night. The next morning, Solstice's executive meeting started earlier than usual. Jason Park, the man who executed Protocol Falcon, walked in and placed the latest report on the table. The Hawthorne and Sons deal is sealed. They want to sign earlier than planned after seeing how you handled the crisis. They say they need a partner with real power. Maya nodded, but the smile never came. "Jason," she said softly, Have you ever thought sometimes we have to cancel an entire flight to prove something that should never need proving? Jason looked at her, respect mingled with surprise. Mom, sometimes systems only change when someone strong enough hits the reset. Maya fell quiet. The line stayed with her, heavy and true enough to tighten her chest. 2 weeks later, Atlantic Crown issued a formal public apology. The CEO's voice on television sounded awkward. We regret the incident involving one of our most valued clients. Atlantic Crown commits to implementing comprehensive diversity and inclusion training for all staff. But the apology came too late. The stock had fallen another 5%. A string of corporate contracts collapsed. On social media, people mocked up the logo Atlantic Crown with the caption, "Privilege Airways." In airport lounges, flight crews whispered about Flight 710 like a ghost story. A cautionary legend: never misjudge the person you serve. And Maya Ellison, standing at the eye of the storm, chose to step away from the noise. She drove to the outskirts of Oakland to visit a small non-profit that supports STEM education for children of color. Standing in the cramped room, listening to children laugh, Maya felt something she had lost for years. Peace. A brown-skinned girl ran up with a paper airplane. "Mom, I want to be an aerospace engineer. Do you think I can fly?" Maya knelt, brushed the girl's hair, and smiled. "You will not only fly, you will own the sky." The child beamed, and it was that smile, not the numbers in any financial report, that became Maya's true reward. That evening, in a pool of warm light in her office, Maya opened her laptop and began typing a new project. The title appeared, Solstice Ascend Foundation. Under the description, she wrote a $500 million fund to give those forgotten by the system a chance to build a new one. She paused, fingers hovering over the keys. In her mind, the image of Karen Whitfield flashed: the tired face, the frightened eyes. Maya was no longer angry. Only compassion edged with regret remained, because she understood the world will not change if everything ends with payback. To rebuild, you must begin with grace. And that night, as the city slept, the light in Solstice's office still burned, a small lighthouse, steady in an ocean of bias. Maya Ellison had cancelled a flight, but she was preparing to launch something far greater, a quiet revolution named respect. 2 years after the day Flight 710 was cancelled, the name Maya Ellison had become a symbol. To the tech world, she was a genius, the one who turned Solstice Dynamics into the company that underpins global logistics infrastructure. To the public, she was the woman who grounded the sky, the woman who made an entire airline buckle with a single phone call. But to Maya herself, that day remained a deep cut, a wound that still ached whenever someone uttered the word justice. On Monday morning, pale winter light washed the Solstice headquarters in a soft gold. In her office on the 48th floor, Maya sat before the screen, idly turning a fountain pen between her fingers. She had just received a fresh report from the Solstice Ascend Foundation, the fund she launched after the 710 incident. The first page described the project Digital Health Access, Camden, New Jersey, a plan to help a community clinic migrate all paper records onto a digital platform. Maya read slowly, her eyes passing over the figures: productivity up 40% in processing medical charts, errors in prescriptions down 60%, additional funding needed $2.7 million. She was not focused on the numbers. She wanted to understand the people behind them. She wanted to know whether the system would actually help poor residents get treated faster, or whether it was just another handsome project on paper. "Prepare a trip to Camden," she said into the intercom. "No notice. I want to see it myself." Her assistant's voice came back. "Yes, Doctor. Ellison. The car will be ready in 40 minutes. At 7 in the evening, the city of Camden was cold and damp, the air smelling of antiseptic and lingering snow. Elm Street Community Health Clinic sat tucked between two tired buildings, its sign flickering a wash of green neon. Inside, a narrow corridor with pale yellow walls pulsed under a buzzing fluorescent light. Maya stepped in, wearing a long grey wool coat and a knit scarf, her hair pulled back. No one recognized her. She took a seat in the waiting row with a few others. The antiseptic and the damp mixed into something sharp and sour. A child coughed raggedly on his mother's shoulder. An elderly man sat bowed thin hands resting on an oxygen tank. At reception, two nurses churned through stacks of paper faces, drawn with fatigue. Maya watched silent. This was the system she wanted to change, the part that artificial intelligence data and algorithms could never feel in numbers alone. The intercom crackled. "Jenkins, Brenda." Pharmacy window. Maya flinched. That name, Brenda Jenkins, was a blade cutting back through time. She wondered if she had misheard. 2 years had passed since that fateful day in San Francisco. But that name could not be a coincidence. She looked up. At the far end of the room, a thin woman stood. Her hair was a dull brown, tied loosely with a rubber band. A worn sweater, faded jeans. She moved slowly toward the pharmacy, limping shoulders, curled as if even the light might hurt. Maya held her breath. It could not be mistaken. Karen Whitfield, or rather the Brenda Jenkins of 2 years ago, stood there. Time had wrung her out. Every trace of pride, every practiced smile that once lived on that face had vanished. In its place were eyes sunken, clouded, and desperate. Maya did not know what to feel. One part of her, the cold part that could steer an empire, whispered that this was the rule, finding its mark. The one who sowed bias had harvested consequence, but the other part, the human part, saw only a figure in pieces. At the pharmacy window, Brenda's voice rasped. "Please, my mother needs the medication tonight. I will have the money on Friday, I promise. It is only $40. The pharmacist shook her head, voice rigid. "I am sorry. Policy requires payment first. I cannot release the medicine until you pay." Brenda lowered her forehead to the glass and trembled. "Please, she cannot breathe without it. I am begging you." The room fell perfectly still. People looked, then turned away, as if afraid that letting compassion show would make their own pain worse. Maya sat rigid, stomach knotted. 2 years ago, Brenda had used her small measure of power to belittle someone else. Now she in turn was crushed by a bigger, colder system grinding its gears. And Maya understood, justice is not only balance, it is symmetry. If a sentence can push someone down, it can also push you into your own abyss. But what happens when that abyss is too deep and no one reaches out a hand? Maya stood and walked to the pharmacy window. Her voice was low and steady. "I will pay her bill." The pharmacist looked up, startled. "I am sorry, what did you say?" "Pay the prescription for Brenda Jenkins," Maya repeated. "And I want to leave a credit of $5,000 for any future medical costs for her family." The air froze. Brenda turned. When their eyes met, the room fell silent. A tear slid down the brown-haired woman's cheek. She knew at once. She recognized the voice, the bearing, and the look that had once made her knees buckle on that fateful flight. Brenda stepped back, shaking. You are." Maya did not answer. She took a nameless, numberless black metal card from her wallet, the card of the Solstice Ascend Foundation, and slid it through the slot. Book it under the community grant. The foundation will settle the invoice. The pharmacist nodded, hands trembling. The scanner chirped, and the receipt printed. Brenda choked out, "Why, after everything I did, why would you help me?" Maya turned neon green, reflected in her eyes, gentle yet unyielding. "Because your mother does not deserve to bear the consequence of her daughter's mistakes." She paused. "And you, Brenda, the wrong was corrected by the very price you paid. I am not helping you. I am correcting a system that once made me endure what you are enduring now." She rested her hand on the counter, her voice soft as breath. "That day you lost your job. Today I want you to regain what you lost, your dignity." Brenda broke into tears. Not the tears of guilt, but the flood that comes after 2 years of wearing a yoke. Maya left in silence. Outside, snow began to fall quiet and clean, as if the sky itself were rinsing away old stains. In her pocket, the phone buzzed. A message from Jason Park read, "The Camden project is officially approved." "Do you want me to inform the media?" Maya glanced at the line and smiled. "No need. Not every story needs to be told." That night, she returned to a small hotel near the docks. On the table sat a single cup of hot tea, and the night reflected in the window. She turned everything over in her mind, the collapse of an airline, the hard falls, the lessons, the lives snagged inside an unfair system. She realized that justice is not an ending. It is the starting point of compassion. Across the city, Brenda clutched the paper bag of medicine and walked through the snow, each step unsteady. But for the first time in 2 years, there was no fear inside her. Because someone she had once insulted had just taught her that true kindness does not require witnesses. And Maya Ellison, the woman who once made the sky stop, was learning to let the wind blow again, only this time in a different direction, the direction of mercy. The morning in Camden was so cold that every breath turned into white smoke. Maya Ellison sat in the car watching crowds huddle at the old bus stop. Everyone kept their heads down, walking quickly through the biting wind, and hardly anyone looked up at the sky. And in that moment, she thought maybe people never truly lose faith. They just forget how to lift their heads. The car rolled away from the poor neighborhood, taking Maya back toward Philadelphia Airport. In 1 hour, she would fly home to San Francisco. But today's flight was no longer just transportation. For her, it was a symbol, the closing of a circle. 2 years after the call that cancelled Flight 710, this was the first time Maya Ellison had flown commercially again. No charter, no private jet, no separate VIP suite. She wanted to experience the world as an ordinary passenger, as one person among many. The first-class lounge shimmered with metallic brightness, not much different from the last time she had been there. But in Maya's eyes, everything had changed. The suits, the rolling luggage, the high heels, the soft, self-satisfied laughter, all of it now sounded like echoes of an old era. She sat down, holding a cup of hot coffee, her gaze drifting to the flight information screen. A memory flickered Karen Whitfield's uneasy smile, and that fateful sentence, "Economy is in the back." Maya drew a deep breath and nodded gently, not to remember, but to forgive. When the announcement came for Flight 312 to San Francisco to begin boarding, Maya stood. She handed her boarding pass to the gate attendant. The young woman smiled brightly, her voice warm and sincere. "Good morning, Dr. Ellison. We're honored to have you on board." A simple greeting, but enough to warm Maya's heart. Not because of the title doctor, but because it was said with genuine respect. She smiled in return and walked through the jet bridge. The familiar scent of an airplane metal leather and fuel enveloped her. This time, it did not carry pain, only peace. When Maya reached her seat in first class, an older man was struggling to lift his bag into the overhead bin. She paused to help, but he smiled and waved her off. "It's all right, I've got it." Then he looked at her, hesitating. "Excuse me, are you Dr. Ellison?" Maya tilted her head slightly. "Yes, I'm Maya." He extended his hand. "I'm Daniel Brooks. I used to be a captain at Atlantic Crown." The air seemed to still for a beat. That name, Brooks, carried the echo of a hoarse voice over the intercom that day. "We have to cancel the flight." Maya shook his hand firmly. "I remember you. You handled the situation with great composure." Brooks sighed. "I left the company right after the incident. They needed someone to take responsibility, and I volunteered. But you know," he looked at her with quiet admiration, "I've never seen a passenger stay as calm as you did that day. I knew you were angry, but you didn't shout. You just made everything stop." Maya was silent for a moment, then said softly, "I didn't want revenge. I just wanted them to listen." Brooks nodded. "And you made the whole world listen." As the plane lifted into the air, the morning light streamed through the clouds. Maya looked out the window. The sky was clear and peaceful, as if there had never been a storm. The steady hum of the engines carried her into thought. Over the past 2 years, she had seen hundreds of thank-you emails, glowing articles, and the flourishing of Solstice Ascend projects. But she had also seen the other side, the collapse of an airline, 2 people losing their jobs, a man losing his entire career. She once thought that was justice, but now she understood justice alone cannot heal. She opened her laptop and began writing in her private journal, the one no one else ever read. January 14th. I saw Brenda Jenkins yesterday. She has changed, thinner, frailer, but her eyes hold gratitude. I helped her not to redeem myself, but to find myself again. Maybe true justice isn't about who pays the price, but about who dares to answer the question, after everything, are we still human? She closed the laptop and leaned back in her seat. 3 hours later, when the plane landed in San Francisco, a young woman approached, holding a small sign that read, "Solstice Ascend Foundation." "Dr. Ellison," she said, voice trembling with excitement, "I'm Lynn, a new member of the foundation. I never thought I'd meet you here." "I just wanted to say I joined because of your story. I want to do something meaningful like you." Maya looked at her and saw herself at 20. Someone who still believed that with enough courage, the world could change. "Do something meaningful," Maya said gently. "But not for me, for yourself. I only clear the path. You're the one who walks it." The young woman smiled and nodded, and in her eyes, Maya saw something that no technology, money, or power could create hope. That evening at Solstice Hall, Maya attended the company's 10th anniversary celebration. When the applause faded, she stepped onto the stage. Behind her, the screen displayed images of cargo ships' ports and impoverished neighborhoods transformed by Solstice technology. "We used to talk about speed," she began, her voice deep and warm. "But I've realized speed means nothing if it leaves people behind. We can make goods move faster, but if compassion doesn't keep up, this world will only grow emptier." The room was silent. Maya continued, 2 years ago I made a plane stop flying. Today I want to say the opposite. It's time for dignity to take off again." Applause thundered. Some people wept. When the ceremony ended, Maya stood alone by the glass window overlooking the bay. The city lights shimmered, reflecting in her eyes, deep, yet at peace. The sea breeze slipped through the window cracks, carrying a chill that felt clean and kind. She thought of Karen, of Lucas, of Brenda, of everyone who had collided with her, not as enemies, but as mirrors that helped her see herself more clearly. If she had stayed silent that day, the world might never have changed. But if she had only punished, no one would have been redeemed. That night, high above the city, a plane from Atlantic Crown, now renamed Aurea Air after its restructuring, lifted off into the dark. And inside first class, a young flight attendant was learning her first lesson. There is no wrong passenger, only service without respect. Maya watched the plane through the glass and smiled. The sky was no longer a place she had to fight for a seat. It had become a symbol of new beginnings, where every person, no matter their status or color, had the right to fly. And so the woman who once made the world stop had helped it rise again, with compassion, with wisdom, and with an unshakable belief that respect is not a reward, but the foundation of every flight. That night, the city of San Francisco was wrapped in thick fog, its lights dimmed beneath the cold mist. On the top floor of Solstice Tower, Maya Ellison had yet to leave her office. She stood by the vast glass window, watching distant city lights shimmer like fallen stars upon the bay. The city was alive, but within her there was a stillness that bordered on haunting. After her speech came hundreds of thank you emails, countless praises, dozens of headlines calling her the most inspirational leader of the decade. But when the noise faded, all that remained was silence. Maya did not crave admiration. What she longed for was change. Yet true change did not happen in a ceremony or a speech. It began in the shadows, in the places where light had yet to reach. The next morning, Jason Park entered her office with a folder in hand. Dr. Ellison, this is the list of Ascend Scholarship candidates. I thought you'd want to see it. Maya flipped through the pages. The names were unfamiliar. Young students, most of them people of color, immigrants, single mothers. They all shared one thing in common. Each had been overlooked by the system. When she reached the final page, her eyes froze. Lucas Hale. She looked up at Jason. He applied. Jason nodded. Through the reintegration program. After the incident, he fell into deep depression and lost everything. But recently, he joined a community counseling project that helps the unemployed find jobs again. His file is exceptional. Maya was silent for a long time. Lucas, the man who once joined in mocking her, was now asking for a second chance from her own foundation. Was it irony or justice? 3 days later, Maya visited the Career Reintegration Center in the Mission District. The room was small, just enough space for a few wooden tables and a whiteboard filled with scribbles. On the wall hung a poster that read, "Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of it." Lucas Hale was speaking to a small group of young people. He was thinner now, his hair streaked with grey, but his voice carried warmth and sincerity. "I used to think I understood the world," he said, fingers intertwined. But one day, just a few minutes on a plane, cost me everything. I was wrong, not only to that woman, but to myself. I lost my job, my wife, my home. But the worst thing I lost was me. The room fell quiet. And then Lucas continued, "One day I received a scholarship from her foundation. The woman I wronged didn't hate me, didn't seek revenge. She helped me rise again. That's when I learned that true justice doesn't punish, it restores." When he finished, Maya, standing behind the door, closed her eyes. A wave of warmth spread through her chest. She didn't need to step inside. It was enough to know that the light had found its way. That afternoon, Maya stopped by the Ascend Foundation office. The young staff were in lively discussion. On the wall hung hundreds of photos. Students, engineers, doctors, people who had once been janitors, waiters, even former inmates, all supported with scholarships, jobs, and startup aid. A young woman approached her, holding a project board. "Dr. Ellison, we've been working on an idea called Sky Reborn, a partnership with Aurea Air to retrain former flight attendants who lost their jobs because of past prejudice. We think it could be a way to close the story." Maya looked at her, her heart tightening. Karen Whitfield's face flashed through her mind, the lost expression, the haunted eyes, the moment she realized what she had done. "You're right," Maya replied softly. "Start the program. Call it the Flight 710 Initiative." The young woman blinked in surprise. Why that name? Maya smiled. Because where pain began, healing can begin too. A week later, Maya attended the signing ceremony between the Ascend Foundation and Aurea Air, the airline reborn from the ashes of Atlantic Crown. The new CEO, Marian Lopez, was a Latina woman, once dismissed by Atlantic Crown years ago. Now she had returned to lead it, carrying a vision she called human aviation. As Maya stepped onto the stage, cameras flashed. She looked out at hundreds of faces, former staff, new trainees, people once broken by the system. 2 years ago, Maya began, "I cancelled a flight out of injustice. Today I help it take off again, not through power, but through faith that people can change." Applause roared through the hall. In the front row, Lucas sat among the advisors, his eyes shining with gratitude. In the back row, Karen was there too, her hair now streaked with grey, her new Aurea Air uniform fitting perfectly. She bowed deeply when their eyes met. There was no fear anymore, only understanding. After the ceremony, Karen approached holding a small envelope. "I wrote this a long time ago, but never dared to send it." Maya opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, the ink trembling. "Thank you for not letting me disappear. I lost everything, but losing everything helped me find myself again. I now train new flight attendants. The first lesson I teach is this: respect needs no reason." Maya folded the letter gently and smiled. "You've taken off again, Karen," she said softly. "This time with real wings." That night, Maya sat on the rooftop of Solstice Tower. Below her, the city glowed like a galaxy. She looked up, watching an Aurea airplane cut through the night sky, leaving behind a long silver trail. In the wind, she could almost hear Karen's laughter, Lucas's voice, Brenda's gaze blending together into a peaceful symphony. No high notes, no explosions, just the quiet resonance of forgiveness. Maya picked up her phone and opened the draft of her upcoming keynote speech for the International Summit. The title line appeared, "Justice isn't the act of punishing what's wrong. It's the courage to rebuild what's broken." She read it once more, then added a final line. "And to rebuild, sometimes we must be the first to bear the pain." She saved it and smiled. High above, the lights of the Aurea airplane faded into the clouds. But inside, Maya Ellison, another light remained, one that did not come from power, but from a heart that had chosen healing over vengeance. She was no longer the woman who made the world stop. She had become the woman who made it begin again, kinder, warmer, and more human. 1 year after the Flight 710 initiative ceremony, the world had almost forgotten the scandal of that day. But for those who had once stood at its center, it remained a faint scar only those who lived it could still feel. Maya Ellison hadn't forgotten. She didn't want to. Because within that pain, she had learned that justice does not live in the moment of triumph, but in the long journey of healing. It was a bright morning in San Francisco. Inside her Solstice Tower office, Maya sat across from Jason Park. On the table was the proposal for her newest venture, the Helios program, a global initiative from the Solstice Ascend Foundation, combining artificial intelligence and human-centered education to teach coding for free to underprivileged children in 20 countries. Jason spoke, his tone brimming with excitement. Helios will launch in India and Kenya next quarter. Major media outlets want to partner with us to cover it. Everyone's calling it the first AI-coordinated system for fair opportunity. Maya listened quietly, but her eyes drifted to a small photograph on her desk, a smiling African girl holding a paper airplane. She remembered what she once told a child in Oakland. You won't just fly, you'll own the sky. We're not doing this for applause, Maya said softly. We're doing it because there are still children who have never seen the sky. Jason nodded with respect. He had worked alongside her for 8 years, and yet he was still amazed by how she saw the world sharp when she needed to be, but profoundly tender when she spoke about people. That afternoon, Maya gave a talk at Stanford University. The auditorium was packed with students, professors, and young leaders. When she stepped onto the stage, the spotlight fell on her composed face, her clear eyes, her steady voice. The same voice that once brought down an airline now moved an entire hall into silence. I once had the power to make people afraid, Maya began, but I realized fear doesn't change anything. Only trust and compassion do. She spoke of the day she was removed from Seat 1A, of the cold phone call that stopped a flight, and of the moment 2 years later when she saw the same woman who had humiliated her head, bowed, begging for medicine for her mother. Her voice did not waver. There was no resentment, only a calm current of truth and empathy. We live in a world where success is measured by how high we stand above others. But I believe the true measure of power is how many people we help stand beside us. The applause was long and heartfelt. A young student stood and asked Dr. Ellison, "You once forgave. But have you ever regretted not punishing them more severely?" Maya paused, then smiled. "If I had punished them, they would fear me. But because I forgave them, they must live with awareness. And awareness is the most permanent form of punishment." After the talk, when most of the audience had left, a woman approached. Maya recognized her immediately. Karen Whitfield. Karen wore the uniform of Aurea Air, neat and confident. On her chest gleamed a badge that read, "Senior Crew Trainer." Miss Ellison Karen said, her voice trembling with emotion, "I wanted to thank you. Not just for the opportunity, but for letting me live again. I didn't deserve it, but you gave me a chance to become better." Maya smiled. "You don't need to thank me. You did that yourself. I only opened the door. You chose to walk through it." Karen nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. "The day I was reinstated, I told my new trainees, one thing, never let the uniform make you think you're above anyone else." I think that's what you wanted to teach me that day, wasn't it? "Yes," Maya said gently. "But now you're the one teaching it to the world." The two women looked at each other no longer, a CEO and an employee, no longer victor and defeated, only two human beings who had walked through the same mistake, the same lesson, and the same awakening. That night, Maya returned home. The penthouse was quiet, the only sound the soft rhythm of waves brushing against the San Francisco Bay. On the desk, Her laptop was open. A new email appeared from Lucas Hale. Dr. Ellison, today I officially assumed the position of Executive Director at the National Reintegration Center. I wanted to thank you for believing in me when no one else would. If anyone asks the secret to my success, I will tell them I was once forgiven. Lucas Meyer read it and smiled. No bitterness remained, no shadow, only warmth, the kind that comes when every wound has finally healed. Near midnight, her phone rang. It was Brenda Jenkins. She was calling from New Jersey, her voice trembling. Dr. Ellison, I just wanted to say thank you. My mother's recovered. I've completed my community health administration degree. I start my new job at the clinic next week. Brenda's voice broke for a moment. You saved my mother and you saved me. Maya replied softly, her tone calm as wind. No one saved anyone, Brenda. We just learned how to forgive even ourselves. The next morning, Maya arrived at Solstice earlier than usual. From her window, she watched the first rays of sunrise glimmer over the bay. The golden light reminded her of that plane that once cut across the night sky, a small light, but steady, never fading. Jason entered and set a new report on her desk. This quarter's revenue is up 23%. Solstice Ascend is now the third largest private education foundation in the world. Maya nodded, replying quietly, Good. But remember, what we're building isn't a company, it's trust. Jason smiled. I think you just found the company's new slogan. That afternoon, Maya met privately with the board of directors. She presented her final project proposal for the year, Project Ether Bring Light, Where Justice Ends. The initiative focused on funding reform systems to help former offenders reintegrate into society, because, as she wrote, everyone deserves a second chance. When the slogan appeared on the screen, the room fell silent. A second later, applause filled the space. Someone whispered, She's not just talking about technology. She's rebuilding humanity. Late that night, Maya sat alone and wrote the final lines in her journal. November 5th. I have flown, I have fallen, I have risen, and I have learned to fly again. No one is truly a villain in their own story. There are only those who haven't yet seen the light. She set the pen down and gazed through the window at the night sky. An Aurea airplane glided past, its lights blinking like small stars. Maya smiled softly and whispered to herself, In the end, the light remains. And so the woman who once made the world fall silent with a single call had now set it in motion again with compassion and grace. Justice had been restored, but what she left behind was something far greater, a legacy called hope. 3 years after Flight 710, the world had changed. Systems that once closed their doors because of prejudice now opened them because of compassion. The lessons Maya Ellison had sown spread far beyond the world of technology. They reached into politics, education, and the way people saw one another. In New York, a group of young entrepreneurs named their startup Seat 1A, a technology platform designed to protect the rights of passengers across the globe. In Kenya, the Helios program had helped thousands of children write their very first lines of code. And in New Jersey, the clinic where Brenda Jenkins had once bowed her head in despair now displayed a sign of gratitude, funded by Solstice Ascend Foundation, the belief that everyone deserves a new beginning. On a windy afternoon, Maya stood inside a grand hall in Geneva, where she was being awarded the Humanitarian Vision Award for her contributions to global compassion. Camera flashes burst around her. Reporters called her name, but Maya only smiled gently and raised the glass plaque engraved with a single line, Power is not control. Power is compassion. When invited to speak, her voice was calm, steady, and warm. 3 years ago, a woman was told she didn't belong in seat 1A. Today I want to say that seat 1A was never just a seat. It has always been a symbol of every place a person has ever been told they don't belong. She paused for a moment, her gaze sweeping across the audience. And if there's one thing I've learned from that journey, it's this. No one has the right to define how much you are worth. You are worthy simply because you are human. The applause rose and rolled like a tide. Among the many faces in the crowd, Maya caught sight of Karen Whitfield, sitting in the front row beside Lucas Hale and Brenda Jenkins. They were all smiling. No more regret, no more guilt, only pride. Maya nodded slightly, her eyes shimmering beneath the brilliant lights of the stage. She understood that this was not a moment of personal glory, but the quiet completion of a long journey of rebirth. And as Maya Ellison stepped away from the stage, the light behind her continued to shine, not the light of fame, but the gentle glow of a soul that had chosen to heal the world through the very wounds that once broke it. That night, Geneva shimmered under 1,000 lights. On the balcony of her hotel, Maya Ellison stood alone, a glass of red wine gently swirling in her hand. Below her, countless reflections glimmered across the surface of Lake Léman like stars that had fallen to earth. She smiled softly, not the smile of victory, but the quiet smile of someone who had completed a circle. From a woman humiliated for the color of her skin to the one who changed how the world defined dignity, her journey was not written by luck, but by unyielding faith. A cold breeze brushed past. She pulled her coat closer and lifted her gaze to the sky. A plane glided overhead, leaving behind a streak of light like a small ribbon of the Milky Way. She remembered that moment on Flight 710. The disdainful glance, the silence of the cabin, and the single phone call that changed everything. Now there was no anger, no pain, only the peace of someone who had learned that true justice does not demand that anyone pay a price. It only asks that people awaken. Her phone vibrated. A message from Jason Park appeared. "Congratulations, Maya. But this is only the beginning. Helios is expanding to 12 more countries. They're calling it the humanitarian system of the future." Maya looked at the screen and smiled. The future isn't a system, Jason. It's people. She turned off the phone and looked back at the sky, where the lights of airplanes blended with the stars. Inside her, a quiet prayer formed. May there come a day when no one needs power to be respected, only the courage to be themselves. And so, after every storm, the woman who once made the world stop had now helped it soar once more. Not with wealth or fame, but with compassion, understanding, and the steadfast belief that every human being deserves a seat in this sky. From the perspective of an expert in ethics and leadership culture, the journey of Maya Ellison is not merely a story about justice, but a testament that true power is not measured by the ability to make others fear you, but by the ability to make them change. She proved that justice does not end with punishment. It continues through rebirth, where compassion becomes the new foundation upon which the world operates. In an era where prejudice can disguise itself as politeness, Maya reminds us that what matters is not which seat we hold, but how we treat one another as human beings worthy of respect. If you believe that compassion can transform an entire system, click like to share that message and subscribe so you won't miss more stories that touch the heart. And before you leave, write a comment that shows your belief in the simplest yet most powerful phrase, keep your dignity.